Hey crew, it's Bid, and I am back with some more ancient knowledge. Today we are going to be diving back into the Corpus Hermeticum. We are going to be reading aloud to Asclepius and the Sacred Sermon. We may wind up getting to the cup or monad, but I don't know. It depends on time. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. Before we begin, if you don't know anything about this channel, know that you should start with the playlist up here. The Infinite Integrations playlist will take you step by step through the things that we are going to be talking about. There are other videos. You should especially pay attention to the 8 rules of creation before you attempt anything that might be contained in the books of the Hermeticum. To Asclepius. Hermes. All that is moved, Asclepius, is it not moved in something and by something? We are joining in the middle of a dialogue. This is pieces missing. These, if you see at the top up here, these asterisks, that is saying that there was something missing prior to this. I should have explained that before I started reading, but this is the dialogue between Hermes and Asclepius. We are going to assume that it's going to go between them. We just heard from a Hermes. This is Asclepius. Assuredly, and must not that in which it's moved be greater than the moved? It must. Mover, again, has greater power than moved? It has, of course. The nature, furthermore, of that in which it's moved must be quite other from the nature of the moved. It must completely. Is not, again, this cosmos vast, so vast that than it there exists no body greater? Assuredly, and massive too, for it is crammed with multitudes of other mighty frames, nay, rather, all the other bodies that there are. It is. And yet, the cosmos is a body. It is a body, and one that's moved. Assuredly. So, we are taking into account 2500 BC, which is probably when this was taking place. This definitely reeks of Platonic times, right? The dialogues of Plato are structured in this exact same manner. And so it is not unreasonable to assume that. We did the whole history of it where it is not unreasonable to assume that for scholarly reasons either. And so 2500 BC, the cosmos, not the firmament, not some flat disk that is floating or whatever. It is a sphere moving through space, which also moves despite the fact that it is so massively large. Of what size, then, must be the space in which it's moved, and of what kind must be the nature of that space? Must it not be far vaster than the cosmos, in order that it may be able to find room for its continued course, so that the moved may not be cramped for want of room and lose its motion? Something, thrice great one, it needs must be immensely vast. And of what nature? Must it not be, Asclepius, of just the contrary? And it is not contrary to body, bodiless? Agreed. Well, space then is bodiless. But bodiless must either be some godlike thing or God himself, and by some godlike thing, I mean no more than the generable, but the ingenerable. If then space be some godlike thing, it is substantial. But if it is God himself, it transcends substance. But it is to be thought of otherwise than God in this way. God is first thinkable for us, not for himself, that's the thing that thought doth fall beneath the thinker's sense. Not for himself, for that the thing that's thought doth fall beneath the thinker's sense. Okay. God then cannot be made thinkable unto himself, in that he's thought of by himself as nothing else than what he thinks. But he is something else for us, and so he's thought of by us. If space, therefore, to be thought, it should not, then be thought as God, but space. If God is also to be thought, he should not be conceived as space, but energy that contain all space. Further, all that is moved not in the moved, but in the stable. And that which moves another is of course stationary, for it is impossible that it should move with it. How is it then that things down there, thrice great one, are moved with those that are already moved? For thou hast said the errant spheres were moved by the inerrant one. This is not, O Asclepius, a moving with, but one against. They are not moved with one another, but against the other. It is this contrariety which turneth the resistance of their motion into rest, for that resistance is the rest of motion. Hence, too, the errant spheres, being moved contrarily to the inerrant one, are moved by one another by mutual contrariety, and also by the stable one through contrariety itself, and this can otherwise not be. The bears up there, which neither sit nor rise, thinkest thou they rest or move? They move, thrice great one. And what is their motion, my Asclepius? Motion that turns forever round the same. But revolution, motion round the same, is fixed by rest, for round the same doth stop beyond same. Beyond same, then, being stopped, if it be steadied in round same, the contrary stands firm, being rendered ever stable by its contrariety. Of this I'll give thee here on earth an instance, which the eye can see. Regard the animals down here. A man, for instance, swimming. The water moves, yet the resistance of his hands and feet give him stability, so that he is not borne along with it, nor sunk thereby. Thou hast, thrice great one, adduced a most clear instance. All motion then is caused in station and by station. The motion, therefore, of the cosmos and of every other hylic animal will not be caused by things exterior to the cosmos, but by things interior, outward, to the exterior, such things as soul or spirit or some such other thing incorporeal. 'Tis not its body that doth move the living thing in it, nay, not even the whole body of the lesser universe, body even though there be no life in it. What meanest thou by this, thrice great one? Is it not bodies then that move the stock and stone and all other things inanimate? By no means, O Asclepius. The something in the body, that which moves, the thing inanimate, this surely is not a body, for that it moves the two of them, both body of the lifter and the lifted, so that a thing that's lifeless will not move a lifeless thing. That which doth move another thing is animate. It is that in that it is the mover. Thou seest then how heavy laden is the soul, for it alone doth lift two bodies. That things, moreover, moved, are moved in something as well as moved by something is clear. Yea, O thrice one, things moved must needs to be moved in something void. Thou sayest well, my Asclepius, for naught of things that are is void. Alone the is not void, stranger to subsistence, for that which is subsistent can never change to void. Are there then, O thrice greatest one, no such thing as an empty cask, for instance, or an empty jar, a cup, or vat, or things like unto them? Alack, Asclepius, for thy far wandering from the truth, thinkest thou that things most full and most replete are void? How meanest thou, thrice great one? Is not air body? It is. And doth this body not pervade all things, and so pervading fill them? And doth body not consist from blending of the four? Full then of air, or all thou callest void, and if of air, then of the four. Further, of this converse follows, that all thou callest full are void of air, for that they have their space filled out with other bodies, and therefore are not able to receive the air therein. These, then, which thou dost say are void, they should be hollow named, not void, for they not only are, but they are full of air and spirit. The argument, Logos, thrice great one, is not to be gainsaid. Air is a body. Further, it is this body which doth pervade all things, and, so pervading, fill them. What are we then to call that space in which the all doth move? The bodiless, Asclepius. What then is the bodiless? 'Tis mind and reason, logos, whole out of whole, self-embracing, free from all body, from all error-free, unsensible to body, and untouchable, self-state in self, containing all, preserving those that are, whose rays use a likeness, are good, truth, light, beyond light, the archetype of soul. What then is God? Not any one of these is he, for he it is that causeth them to be, both all and each, and everything of all that are. Nor hath he left a thing beside that is not, but they are all from things that are, and not from things that are not. For that the things that are not have naturally no power of being anything, but rather have the nature of the inability to be. And conversely, the things that are have not the nature of some time not being. What sayest thou ever then God is? God, therefore, is not mind, but cause that the mind is. God is not spirit, but cause that the spirit is. God is not light, but cause that the light is. Hence, one should honor God with these two names, the Good and Father, names which pertain to him alone and no one else. For no one of the other so-called gods, no one of men or demons can be in any measure good but God alone, and he is good alone and nothing else. The rest of things are all separable from the good's nature, for all the rest are soul and body, which have no space that can contain the good. For that as mighty is the greatness of the good, as is the being of all things that are, both bodies and things bodiless, things sensible and unintelligible things. Call not thou therefore aught else good, for thou wouldst impious be, nor anything at all, any time, call God but good alone, for thou wouldst again be impious. Though then the good is spoken of by all, it is not understood by all what thing it is. Not only then is God not understood by all, but both unto the gods and some of men, they out of ignorance do give the name of good, though they can never either be or become good. For they are very different from God, while good can never be distinguished from him, for that God is the same as good. The rest of the immortal ones are none the less honored with the name of God and spoken of as gods. But God is good, not out of courtesy, but out of nature. For that God's nature and the good is one is the kind of both, from which all other kinds proceed. The good is he who gives all things and not receives. God then doth give all things and receive not. God then is good, and good is God. The other name of God is Father, again, because he is that which maketh all. The part of Father is to make. Wherefore child-making is a very great and most pious thing in life for them who think aright, and to leave life on earth without a child is a very great misfortune and impiety, and he who hath no child is punished by the demons after death. And this punishment, that man's soul who hath no child shall be condemned unto a body with neither man's nor woman's nature, a thing accursed beneath the sun. Wherefore, Asclepius, let not your sympathies be with the man who hath no child, but rather pity his mishap, knowing what punishment abides for him. Let all that has been said, then, be to thee, Asclepius, an introduction to the Gnosis of the nature of all things. And so wraps up for Asclepius. And what have we learned here? We learned that God is beyond all of creation. We talked about this yesterday, but I believe that God is beyond all of creation. He is the thing that is all, right? He is me. He is you. He is the space between me and you. He is the space between the space between me and you. He is the air that fills the void. He is the void that has no air to fill. He is all things. He is the space in which things move. All of that is what this was saying, basically. There is a separation, right? we are each in our own incarnation. We are each here to learn our own individual lessons, and that is something that we all each have to endeavor for ourselves. But we work together in large part to create the reality in which we are in. That is also contained in here. This wasn't a great, deep discourse onto the metaphysical, right? This was a justification within a religious doctrine of scientific proofs, right? Well, you see this thing, it can't move if there is something holding it from moving. So the void or the air. And the ability to move is showing the absence of the solidity. You cannot move something if there is nothing to push from. If you're underwater and you try to push something that's heavier than you, you will push yourself back. But if you plant your feet and you firm yourself, you push that same object, you'll make it go forward because you are now stationary and you can push forward. That was described in here as well. The next one is called the Sacred Sermon, and there are parts of the whole that are missing, right? This one I think is complete, but there was another sermon that we skipped over because most of it was gone. I always leave the link down below to the source material so that you can go back and see the ones that I'm skipping. There is quite a bit of stuff that we are going to be skipping, guys. A lot of the breakdowns and commentaries we're not going to bother with because I am doing that. I'm not even reading their version of it because it doesn't matter. What I am giving out is what I am here to give out, and so it is what it is. The Sacred Sermon of Hermes. The glory of all things is God, Godhead, and godly nature. Source of the things that are is God, who is both mind and nature, yea, matter, the wisdom that reveals all things. Source too is Godhead, yea, nature, energy, necessity, and end, and making new again. Darkness that knew no bounds in abyss, and water too, the subtle breath intelligent, these were by power of God in chaos. Then holy light arose, and there collected neath dry space, from out of moist essence elements, and all the gods do separate things out from fecund nature. All things being undefined and unwrought, the light things were assigned unto the height, and the heavy ones had their foundations laid down underneath the moist part of dry space. The universal things being bounded off by fire and hanged in breath to keep them up. And heaven was seen in 7 circles. Its gods were visible in forms of stars with all their signs, while nature had her members made articulate together with the gods in her, and heaven's periphery revolved in cyclic course, borne on by the breath of God. And every god by his own proper power brought forth what was appointed to him. Thus there arose 4-footed beasts and creeping things, and those that in the water dwell, and things with wings, and everything that beareth seed and grass, and shoot up every flower, and all having in themselves seed of again becoming. And they selected out the births of men for Gnosis of the works of God, and attestation to the energy of nature. The multitude of men for lordship, all over all beneath the heaven in Gnosis of its blessings, that they might increase in increasing, and multiply in multitude, and every soul enfleshed by revolution of the cyclic gods, for observation of the marvels of the heaven and heaven gods' revolution, and of the works of God's and energy of nature, for tokens of its blessing, for gnosis of the power of God, that they might know the fates that follow good and evil deeds, and learn the cunning work of all good arts. Thus there begins in their living and their growing wise, according to the fate appointed by the revolution of the cyclic gods, and their decreasing for this end. And there shall be memorials mighty of their handiworks upon the earth, leaving dim trace behind when the cycles are renewed. For every birth of flesh and soul, and of the fruit of seed, and every handiwork, though it decay, shall of necessity renew itself, both by the renovation of the gods, and by the turning round of nature's rhythmic will. For that, whereas the Godhead is nature's ever making new again the cosmic mixture, Nature herself is also co-established in that Godhead. And so ends the sacred sermon of Hermes. And this was mostly just a reiteration of chapter 1, right? This was a slightly different telling of the creation story, not even in detail. There's not a whole lot here to expound upon. If you would like to see more exposition on what this was entailing, it is better explained in the video that we did yesterday. Next up, we are going to be able to make it. I wasn't sure, I never know how long it's going to take to read these things, but we're only 20 minutes in and we did both the other ones. So we're definitely going to have time for this one and maybe one more. So let's dig in and see what is up with the cup or monad of Hermes to Tat. Hermes, with reason, logos, not with the hands, with reason, not with hands, did the world maker make the universal world, so that thou thus shouldst think of him as everywhere and ever being the author of all things, the one and only who, by his will, all beings hath created. The body of him is a thing no man can touch, or see, or measure, a body inextensible, like to no other frame. 'Tis neither fire, nor water, air, nor breath, yet all of them come from it. Now, being good, he willed to consecrate this body to himself alone, and set its earth in order, and adorn it. So down to earth he sent the cosmos of this frame divine, man, a life that cannot die, and yet a life that dies. And over all other lives, and over cosmos too, did man excel by reason of the reason and the mind. For contemplator of God's work did man become. He marveled, and did strive to know their author. Reason, logos, indeed, O Tat, among all men he hath distributed, but mind not yet. Not that he grudgeth any, for grudging cometh not from him, but hath its place below, within the souls of men who have no mind. Tat, why then did God, O Father, not all bestow a share of mine? Hermes, he willed my son to have it set up in the midst for souls, just as it were a prize. And where hath he had it set up? He tilled a mighty cup with it, and set it down, joining a herald to it, to whom he gave command to make this proclamation to the hearts of men. Baptize thyself with this cup's baptism. What heart can do so? What heart can do so? Thou that hast faith, thou canst ascend to him that hath sent down the cup. Thou that dost know for what thou didst come into being. As many then as understood the herald's tidings and doused themselves in mind, became partakers in the Gnosis. And when they had received the mind, they were made perfect men. But they who do not understand the tidings these, since they possess the aid of reason only, and not mind, are ignorant, wherefore they have come into being, and whereby. This particular part is telling you something. People exist. Whether or not they are cognizant of it is a whole other thing. There are people that go through their entire lives merely existing. They get up, they go to work, they come home, they go to sleep. It is a repeated pattern and a cycle that they have no desire to deviate from. There are people like that. There are people who live their life to the fullest and even then still do not understand that they are divine sparks of God. That does not mean you are God. It means that you are a tiny piece of God sent here to live a lesson and learn things. When you become aware of the fact that you are a piece of God and that He is not here to judge you, but instead to help you, then you get the mind that is described right here. It is the ability to understand. You can go through life perfectly happy and content as a human and do your full intended purpose without ever waking up. But if you are here this far into this video, you are of the mind to wake up, and that means that you are contemplating the meaning of life. You are pursuing the goal of the Creator to try to understand Him better. God is, and that is what you should know. He is not here to judge you. He is here to help you. That is also what you should know. These senses of such men are like irrational creatures, and as their whole makeup is in their feelings and their impulses, they fail in all appreciation of those things which really are worth contemplation. These center all their thought upon the pleasures of the body and its appetites, in the belief that for its sake man has come into being. But they who have received some portion of God's gift, these had, if we judge by their deeds, have from death's bonds won their release. For they embrace in their own mind all things on the earth, all things, things on the earth, things in the heaven, and things above the heaven, if there be aught. And having raised themselves so far, they sight the good, and having sighted it, they look upon their sojourn here as a mischance, and in disdain of it all, both things in body and the bodiless, they speed their way into that one and only one. So, if you embrace, right, they who have received some portion of God's gift. God's gift is the Gnosis. If we judge by their deeds, have from death's bond won their release. You can live your life in utter fear. It is in the best interest of the control systems that are currently in place that you live your life in fear. That you live as though when you pass on, every single action that you have taken will be held to the utmost scrutiny. And that if you have fallen short of perfection, then you will be denied. No. I don't care what your religion says. No. I did an extensive Bible study, and one of the things we learned in there is that God will forgive you from anything without any need for a sacrifice, right? The only thing that was ever sacrificed for you to be forgiven from your sins is your sins, the things that are holding you back from being the thing that you were called to be. That is what sin is. And so, if you have received the Gnosis from God, if you have seeked, if you have knocked, if you have done the things that you were told to do to receive the knowledge, right? You will get it, you will. And it will change you. Your goals shift. Your whole life vision will change. You will no longer be who you were. Once you have the scope of the eternal, it is really hard to come back to the mortal. I personally have been separated from this corporeal 3 times, right? It's happened 3 times that I have been separated from here. One was definitely close to death. The other 2 was probably not as close in my estimation, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't. But I have had external revelations. I have seen the creation of the universe. I have had other visions. There's no way that I can do those for myself. I have aphantasia. I cannot willfully do anything. I barely even dream. And so when I have my experiences, I know that they're real. And when you know, you know. When you know, it changes things. You have no choice but for everything to shift. The goal that you were on is no longer even in the field, right? When I was young, my goal was money. It was like a laser beam. I was about that bread. I was getting that cash, right? When I had the Gnosis, when I got the receive of the mind as well as the thought, my goal shifted from money. It's no longer the primary concern in my life. Is it useful? Absolutely. Do I want it? Yeah, it's a great tool. But it is not the primary driver of my life. My life changed to service when I had my experience. It didn't become about me. It became about you. That was unusual for me. That is not something normal for me. For me to not consider, because I always considered people, but to actually take that consideration and act upon it. That was the change that happened to me. It reoriented my goals completely. That's what he just told you. That if you were centered your thoughts upon the pleasures of the body and its appetite, that is what you're going to reap. That will be your reward. And you will be judged according to the measure that you hold. All right, next. This is, O Tad, the gnosis of the mind, visions of the things divine. God knowledge is it, for the cup is God's. Father, I, too, would be baptized, unless thou first shall hate thy body, son, thou cannot love thyself. But if thou lovest thyself, thou shalt have mind, and having mind, thou shalt share in the gnosis. Father, what do you mean? It is not possible, my son, to give thyself to both. I mean to things that perish and to things divine. For seeing that existing things are twain, body and bodiless, in which the perishing and the divine are understood, the man who hath the will to choose is left the choice of one or the other. For it can never be the twain should meet, and in those souls to whom the choice is left, the waning of the one causes the other's growth to show itself. There's an old saying. Man cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve God and mammon. It's told in a whole lot of different ways, and here was one of them. Do you know why it is almost impossible for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven? It's not because he's got money. It's because of what he chooses to do with that money. Because once you start accumulating wealth, the wealth takes on a life, and you start valuing that life instead of the lives around you. Now, money is a tool. It cannot absolutely corrupt you. You can be virtuous and have $1 billion. It is just extremely hard to do so. The temptations and the levels of temptation change when you have the ability to do the things that you want to do. And so when you do have the money, the chances are great that you will serve the wrong God. That is why so many people eschew the things of this earth, right? When you're told to give all that you have away to the poor and come and follow me. It's not because you can't have the things. God told you many times that you could have the things. He wants you to have the things. But he wants you to keep him primary to the things. To understand that all the things come from him. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't. It can be the thing that you are using to try to distance yourself from him. He still gave it to you. You just chose it. And so you have to make the change. You have to make the choice. You cannot devote yourself fully to money and serve God. But you can receive money while serving God. As long as you keep your priorities correct. Right? We don't see that often. Most of the time when we see people who are proclaiming God and they actually have the money, they are not doing the right things with it. You look at Copeland, right? He's a great example, that demon there. That guy has fully subverted himself to the love of the flesh. Fully committed. You can see it in his face when he talks. Now, the choosing of the better not only proves a lot most fair for him who makes the choice, seeing it makes the man a god, but also shows his piety to God. Whereas the choosing of the worse, although it doth destroy the man, it only doth disturb God's harmony to this extent, that as processions pass by in the middle of the way, without being able to do anything but take the road from others, so do such men move in a procession through the world, led by their body's pleasures. We know people like that, don't we? Like, I bet you could probably pull up a name of someone who does this, right? They take up so much space because of the things that they have that other people can't even really function. They choose the worse. And it disturbs God's harmony, but only to this extent, that as processions pass by in the middle of the way, without being able to do anything but take the road from others, so do such men move in procession, led through the world by their body's pleasures. This being so, O Tat, what comes from God hath been and will be ours. But that which is dependent on ourselves, Let this press onward and have no delay, for 'tis not God, 'tis we who are the cause of evil things, preferring them to good. Thou seest, my son, how many are the bodies through which we have to pass. How many are the choirs of demons? How many choirs of demons? How vast the system of star courses through which our path doth lie, to hasten to the one and only God. For to the good there is no other shore. It has no bounds. It is without an end, and for itself it is without a beginning too. Though unto us it seems to have one, the Gnosis. Therefore it is Gnosis. Therefore to it Gnosis is no beginning. Rather it is it that Gnosis doth afford to us the first beginning of its being known. Let us hold, therefore, of the beginning, and quickly speed through all we have to pass. 'Tis very hard to leave the things we have grown used to, which meet our gaze on every side, and turn ourselves back to the old path. Appearances delight us, whereas things which appear not to make their believing hard. Now, evils are the more apparent things, whereas the good can never show itself unto the eyes, for it hath neither form nor figure. Therefore the good is like itself alone, and unlike all things else, for 'tis impossible that that which hath no body should make itself apparent to a body. The like's superiority to the unlike, and the unlike's inferiority to the like, consist in this: the oneness, being source and root of all, is in all things as root and source. Without this, source is naught, whereas the source itself is from naught but itself. Since it is source of all the rest, it is itself its source, since it may have no other source. The oneness, then, being source, containeth every number, but is contained by none, engendereth every number, but is engendered by no one other. And that is a reiteration of God is all things. He is me, He is you, He is the space between me and you, and He is the space between me and you. Now, all that is engendered is imperfect. It is divisible, to increase subject and to decrease. But with the perfect one, none of these things doth hold. Now, that which is increasable increases from the oneness, but succumbs through its own feebleness when it can no longer contain the one. And now, O Tat, God's image hath been sketched for thee, as far as it can be, and if thou wilt attentively dwell on it and observe it with thy heart's eyes, believe me, son, thou'lt find the path that leads above. Nay, the image shall become thy guide itself, because the sight divine hath this particular charm. It holdeth fast and draweth unto it those who succeed in opening their eyes, just as they say the magnet draweth iron. And that is probably the most important part of this. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up because we're coming up on 40 minutes, and I haven't prepared any farther than this, so I don't even know what's coming up. But the thing to pull forth from this is the simple wanting of will start the change. When you begin your journey to seek, then will be revealed the path to take. That is hard if you have been raised up in a particular dogma, a particular doctrine. You think the path is already there, and then one day you notice the new path. And when you see it, you can't unsee it. You're like, wait a second. This path I'm on, it leads to a just destination, and it is possible to get to the destination from any of the paths. But this other path seems to be a truer path, a more narrow path. Right? The narrow path is the way. It is not open wide for everyone. It is. Any singular person can at any point in time decide to embark upon the path. But most people won't. Most people are content in their control systems. There are Very good reasons for that. There are a lot of lessons to be learned in the control systems, but there are equally a lot of lessons to be learned outside of the control systems. If you are seeking outside of the control systems, then you will find the new path. If you ask God to show you the true path, He will open the path for you. But I am here to warn you. Take this warning to heed. I am warning you. It is tough to be different. It is hard to seek the true path. It is a very difficult thing to learn that you have to assimilate the darkness that comes from you into you. You have to control the things that you don't want to, that you think you can just give away. You think that someone else can pay the price for you, but that is silly. You think that there was a blood sacrifice required for forgiveness, and that is equally silly. God wants you. He wants you fully and willingly and serving Him with your heart. Sometimes that requires you to stay in the systems. Sometimes it requires you to buck the system. If you were this far along in the video, you're trying to buck the system. The path is here. It is open for you. It is open for everyone, but not everyone is going to take it. I say all the time, I'm here for everyone, but I'm not for everyone. And that is a very real thing. I am here for those who seek the narrow path. The narrow path is not somebody else paying the price for you. The narrow path is not walking down the aisle, saying a prayer, and then thinking you can just continue in your life in the way that you did. That is not the narrow path. That is not seeking the light. There is a responsibility level that is placed upon you when you seek the knowledge, because when you get the knowledge, then you have to live by it. You have to change your life, and that is extraordinarily difficult for a lot of people. Not everybody can do it, but it is infinitely worth it. There is no better reward than the Gnosis, the knowing, the mind, having the power that God has created you with. It is a real thing. You can use it, whether you are following the 8 laws of creation or not, but I highly, highly recommend that you watch at least that video before you start any of them. The 8 laws of creation are the most important. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult topic. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs and I tend to step on toes when I talk about them, but that does not stop me from talking about them. I have the Gnosis. I have the mind. I have the answers. I got this by direct download. Like, these are confirmations for me. I'm reading through the Hermeticum and I'm seeing things that were given to me directly. So I don't have reason to doubt. I don't. I have the things that people seek and people won't listen. It's incredibly annoying. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. And this has been Pit's Take. Peace.